Database backup and restore. So first of all, talking about database backup, as we know that we have database on SQL Server, and database contains all the sensitive data or client's information or an application information. It has schema on it. So database backup deals with entire thing that is there on a database. It includes schema, it includes data, it includes log, transaction log, everything. So whenever a disaster happens, main purpose is like this backup will be used to recover the database. Any issue with the data. Now about restore. So this backups that we will be taking, that will be used for restoring or recovering the database. That is mainly about database backup and restore. Another purpose for the backup is moving the database from one server to another server. Suppose we have development environment servers and then UAT and then production. Throughout the system development lifecycle, for any update on a software or testing or development, we will require to copy the database from production to lower environment or development to other environment time to time on demand basis. So the backup will be used to copy a database from one location to another location for different purpose like software development, software testing, and other purpose. Now next topic we have software backup agreement for different environments like production, dev, UAT, SIT, performance. So as I said, that we have two kind of backup. One is scheduled backup, another one is on-demand backup. Scheduled backup are there for any disaster. So anything happens on a server, you recover it. You have to recover it. Now, talking about development server and testing environments, these servers they don't keep sensitive schema or sensitive data on it. Mainly everything will be there in production. The purpose of development environment is to develop. So anything that is there in the production, you copy it into development environment, and then for any upgrade, you keep the script saved. Okay, and then you apply once the database is refreshed on development environment, you apply that there. So that changes are there in the development environment. Same way it is done in testing environment and then performance environment and other non-production environment. Now talking about database backup agreement, we generally backup production database. Okay, that is the most sensitive database. So the agreement for the backup for DBA will be based on production, and for that we have to have a service level agreement, which deals with client, like what are the client's requirements for the backup. It depends on how frequently they will be changing the data. Okay, and based on that, DBA has to configure the database backups. There is no requirements generally for non-production, which is SIT, UAT, or test environment or development environment. It's not there. But DBA has to have an agreement, and DBA needs to inform the management that we are not going to take any backup regular basis in non-production environment. If this is required, the server owner, the development owner, server owner, or testing server owner, which is testing managers, they need to call it out. Okay, we need regular scheduled backup, and they have to request DBA for that. So generally, we do not take the backup that way or non-production. Generally, for non-production, the backup is on demand basis. Sometimes there will be some changes or sensitive testing with sensitive data will be there in non-production, like SIT environment or UAT or performance environment, mostly SIT environment. And if for any reason these teams need backup, they will be requesting DBA. They will create ticket, but without any agreement, we will not schedule any schedule backup on non-production area. Refresh policy, database backup and restore. So database refresh policy will be on-demand basis, unless a database has a disaster, or SQL Server has disaster. So if a disaster is there, DBA is responsible for any environment to restore it back. But if non-production is there, generally the database will be refreshed from production. Okay, because we will not be taking any backup on non-production area. So if non-production has any disaster, it will be backed up from production and restored on non-production area. If the disaster is on production environment, DBA has to fix that from the backup in production. So that is the refresh policy. Retention policy, generally we will be backing up in production, so there will be an agreement, because you have limited space in SAN. So if you are backing it up on SAN or NAS, you definitely need to archive them on tape. So generally the retention policy is 1 month, so you will keep that handy, those backups, to restore anytime for 1 month. And after that it will go back to tape, and from tape it will, if any request is there, it will take 2 days or 3 days or 1 week to get the backup. So if any disaster happens and people come to know that we used to have sensitive data more than 40 days back, and they just come to know today, so what they will request, okay, could you please restore the database from 40 days back? So what will you do? You will request your network support team or database backup and restore team, that tape backup team, you can say, not backup and restore. So tape backup team, that could you please give me the tape? You will mention there the location and everything, and they will give you the tape, and they will copy on a network location. You will just restore that. So generally retention policy will be 30 to 40 days. Based on available space you have. Backup location, there are generally 2 backup locations you have, SAN and NAS. So we already studied about SAN and NAS. NAS is network location. It's not physically, you can consider it's a part of of the server. Okay, but SAN is like physically, it's a part of a server, and SAN is closer to the server, so it's much faster compared to NAS. So SAN cost is higher, very high compared to NAS. Now to back up a database, since the distance is closer for SAN, it will take less time always. So as a DBA, you will always prefer to have SAN space first, which is locally attached to the server. You want a backup there, and then once the backup is done, you will copy it over NAS, because SAN is expensive. You don't want to keep the space occupied with your backup all the time. You want to free up daily basis, or maybe 2 days, every 2 days. So you will copy that from SAN to NAS. Once your backups are done, you will have a process. You will copy that those backups from production, production server to NAS location. Next item, we have restore location. Generally, when you have a request to restore, you need to know where the backups are. Is it on SAN? Is it on NAS? Okay, let's say you have agreement like to have the backup on SAN for 1 day. So if database crashes just 1 day back, then you can restore from SAN. So that is the location for restore. But if it moves already to NAS, it's better to copy from NAS to SAN, locally, and then you start the restore. Otherwise, it will take more time to restore. So hopefully you understand this point. And then uh, SAN backup versus NAS backup, and then tape backup. So obviously we have first preference on SAN, okay, then the NAS backup, and tape backup is totally separate. You don't backup from SQL Server to tape backup. So tape backup will be taken either from SAN directly to tape or NAS to tape. So DBA service level agreement, as I said that for every DBA tasks you will have agreement. So for backup you will have agreement, written agreement, that what is your backup and restore policy. As I said, you don't take backup on non-production. So that has to be agreed by server owners and stakeholders management. If you want to take a backup from production, the server owners or the production support team, they have to call out the frequency of it, how frequently they are changing the data. And then based on that, they will put their requirements. This is the requirements for our point in time recovery. So if that implies if a disaster happens, we want you to restore within last 15 minutes data. So for that, they have to call it out, and you have to have a document, and everything has to be written. Same way for restore. So all the restore policy will be there. After you backup, if production support wants the copy of the backup, you will provide the information that these are the backups that we have. For restore, after the restore, you provide the log that we have restored it, and they're supposed to verify all the restores. So these are the agreements that you will make as a DBA with the management and other teams. Now, database recovery model. So we have to backup and restore database, but we need to understand what kind of recovery we prefer. Based on that, you will set up the recovery model, and then from there you will be able to backup database. So for example, your recovery plan is okay, it's an OLAP system. OLAP is analytic system. So we in analytic system, analytic processing, we do not do frequent insert, update, delete. So the analytic processes, like you do bulk insert mostly, okay. So bulk load, and then long processing, you do this kind of thing. So it's not piece by piece or row by row transaction frequent, like a bank transaction or stock market transaction, or store like Amazon marketplace or eBay marketplace frequent transactions. It's not like that. So you do a processing for report or research, stuff like that. And this kind of environment, as I said, it doesn't have frequent insert, update, delete, which are sensitive. So you don't need a point in time recovery for that. Like you will not have requirements. Okay, I want DBAs to restore the data from last 15 minutes. So daily backup is fine, or maybe one time full backup daily, and then differential backup. Now, if the database is very big, so maybe one time you will take a full backup, and then you will have differential backup daily basis. Now, in that case, your recovery model of the database has to be simple mode. So your transaction log will not go bigger, and it will be handled automatically. So for simple mode, the transaction log, as I discussed, that all the insert, update, delete instructions are written on the transaction log, and then transaction log grows, and then it has to free up. So once all the transaction instructions are written on the database, all the statements are written on the tables, and data gets inserted into tables. So for that, the space will be released automatically from the transaction log. You don't need to do anything if the database model is on simple mode. and it's easy to maintain. That's another thing. You don't need to care about transaction log to take. It doesn't mean that the log doesn't grow at all. Log will definitely grow, but it will automatically handle the space usage and clear up everything after the transaction is completed and database comes to stable situation where when the transactions are done or completed. Key point: if database on simple mode, you cannot take the transaction log backup. Only full backup and differential backup is allowed if the database recovery model is simple. And where will you see the database recovery model? On database property. So this is the database property. You can see, right click on a database and you can see database property, and you click on options and you will have recovery model, full, simple, bulk log. Next we have full recovery model. When we have production environment like OLTP environment, frequent insert update deletes are going on, and these are all sensitive. You cannot lose a client's information or data from the table at all. So that time you have to set the database recovery model to full. So all the transactions that you have on a table or for any process or databases, everything will be written on the transaction log, and everything will be saved. So if any disaster happens and you restore the transaction log, it will have all the last transaction, like 5 minutes back. Even it can reach out to there if you are taking frequent transaction log. So that is about full database recovery model. You cannot leave transaction log backup here. You must have to take transaction log backup, otherwise transaction log will grow and then the database will be out of space. So for example, you are on a state that you have a lot of transaction requests, and all on a sudden all the pending transactions are there, like maybe that pending transaction will take 30 minutes or 1 hour to complete all the insertion to the database from transaction log, whatever instructions are there in transaction log. So in that case, if the database crashes, so you have saved the transaction log for like last 5 minutes. So till that point, if you restore the database, all the transaction will be written to the database. So there will be no missing data. Only last 5 minutes data you will be losing, and then that has to be taken care. So that is about the full log. Just remember one more point that I said earlier, that you must have to enable the transaction log, otherwise database will crash. It will go out of space. Next we have bulk log mode. This is normally not used because if you are doing bulk, you can handle that using full mode. So simple mode will also handle the bulk insert process, and then also full mode deals with any bulk insert from file to tables. This is like a special one. So another one is just for dedicated for bulk load. So if you're doing bulk load, you change that model to bulk load. That will be better. And then once you're done with it, you either change it back to full mode or simple mode. So just remember one point: transaction pattern will be from file to table, not you have line by line instruction like that gets logged in transaction log. So this recovery model is only for loading data from files or other system to SQL Server. So if you again want to do a transaction row by row insertion with inserted statement, update, delete statement, then you have to bring that to full mode or simple mode. So that is about recovery model of databases. Type of backup, we already discussed about that in recovery model. So full backup means like you will have the all the saved data backed up there, If you have transactions that will not be backed up with the full backup, so that is not the purpose. Now, for example, it's 12 o'clock and you take a full backup, so that will have all the transaction till 12. Um, so full backup will have all the data, even whatever is there in transaction log, it will be there. But the main thing is, if there are any later transactions, obviously that will not come. So for that, every 5 minutes, like after the full backup, if you want to enable your transaction log, you will have the point in time recovery. So with the full backup, you will not have the ability to recover point in time recovery. Let me explain it one more time. So let's say 12 o'clock you back up, so you have all the data into it, but somebody shoot another big transactions there, insert or update delete, or frequent transactions are going on till 12:30. So this you have the backup till 12 o'clock. Now you don't want to back up again at 12:30 to have all the database. It's not necessary to take again one more backup at 12:30 full backup. So what will you do? Either you can take differential backup, so that will have just the differences from full backup to that point, okay, or you can take transaction log. The transaction log will have all the transaction in there, but that is not yet written probably into the database. But if you take a differential backup, so let's say 12:30 you take a differential backup, so all the data are intact. So whenever you restore, nothing has to be written from transaction log to the database. So everything will be ready by then. So that is about full backup and differential backup. Transaction log backup, as I said, you have logs that will contain all the insert, update, delete instructions written there. It's just a statement, it's not a data. So you have all the instructions, and based on that instruction, it will read one by one line from transaction log and write it to the database tables, wherever, or update or delete database from database. So backing up log means you are backing up transaction log. So that is about transaction log backup. This one will take time because you are taking the complete database backup. So let's say if you're running a full backup and database size is 500 GB, so it will take entire 500 GB backup. But if you are taking differential backup, what it will do, like 12 o'clock you have 500 GB, 12:30 you have 50 GB added, for example. So within this 30 minutes time, you uploaded 50 GB data, and then if you take a differential backup at 12:30, it will take only 50 GB backup. It's not going to take a 550 GB backup. So it will be obviously lower in size. Full backup will take more time. It's like during business hour, you don't want to run full backup. You generally run after business hour or before business hour starts. Let's say 5 o'clock in the morning, and that has to be completed before 7 o'clock or 7:30. You want to complete the full backup little early, maybe 7 o'clock, because sometimes if it's running late for some reason or slow performance there, it will go into the business hours, and you will have impacts on production processes. So you don't want that. So during business hour, there will be no impact if you take only transaction log backup, because transaction log is a separate thing from database. So log backup is like a very useful for performance. So you take a full backup 6 o'clock in the morning, and then you take frequent transaction log, that should be fine. If you take differential backup, it will deal with database data. Okay, so you are accessing database during that time. So if there are a lot of changes, it will impact the production. So this differential backup you will also try to avoid during business hour if it's OLTP. If it's OLAP, probably you can do that, or you may have to do it after hours. But transaction log during business hour, you can perform that. There is no issue. So full backup after business hour or before business hour starts. Differential backup also recommended like that. Transaction log during business hour, you can do that, and after hours as well. But main target is during business hour to keep all the changes backed up. So for backup, we have two kind of environment. Just letting you know, OLAP, online analytic processing, online transaction processing. This deals with the first one. Generally deals with more frequent insert, update, delete, and row by row insertion or update or delete. This is basically for processing. So inserts are or changes, data change, DMLs are not sensitive that much compared to OLTP. So that is about two environments. So what kind of request we will be receiving as a DBA for backup? So we will receive on-demand backup. So time you will get a request or with a ticket that backup one single database from a server or multiple databases from a server. And it can be full, it can be differential. Normally these two will be there if it's on-demand basis. Scheduled backups, you have to do it if the request is there for a server, production server obviously. Scheduled backup will be there, full differential transaction log. If non-production request is there, that is exceptional case, you will have approval from your manager even for the space. You need space for that as well. So scheduled backup for full differential transaction log for production. Non-production generally just you do if there is request and approvals, only full backup normally. And you are once you are done with the backup, you are responsible to provide the history of the backup, like what are the backups, when it was taken, on which database, what type of backup and all. Now when you do backup and restore, how do you do it? There are two ways there. You can use script or you can through GUI. Both backup and restore, schedule backup, or single one or multiple backups. We will see that now.